Thank you. Good morning. I am Jo Steigerwald, and I am the Development Director at Seeds of Literacy. We are an adult basic education and GED high school equivalency prep program in Cleveland. We serve about 1,000 students a year. And just a little bit of facts before we get to the main attraction, and then after Margo's talk, we can have some Q&A time. Cleveland has kind of an amazing, quiet literacy crisis. About 2/3 of our adult residents in Cleveland, are considered to be functionally illiterate. Now, that does not mean they cannot read and write, and it does not mean that they are really, really smart, because they are. But it means that they have reading and math skills at about a 3rd to 4th grade level, and so that's incredibly limiting in terms of what your life is like, and that's incredibly chaotic. So that's how sort of the theme of chaos and illiteracy are related. And I am so proud to be here to introduce Margo. I've known Margo Hudson for about 10 years, and I met her when she was a student at Seeds of Literacy, and I've really watched her transform into this amazing advocate for adult literacy and its power to turn chaos into opportunity. Margo is one of the most fearless people I have ever met. When she makes up her mind to do something, she is relentless, and she knows the most amazing people. So the director of the science division at NASA headquarters keeps one of Margo's brochures, her tips for success that you too can have. It's free. He keeps it on his whiteboard, because I've seen pictures. The Grammy Award-winning classical guitarist Jason Vio has done classroom concerts at Seeds of Literacy because Margo invited him to. Senator Sherrod Brown sent Margo a bouquet of roses when she graduated. So she's an amazing woman, and you'll hear more. But one of the best things about Margo is her willingness to share her story of how literacy has made her life limitless. So, please welcome Margo.
Good morning. My name is Margo Hudson. I am a graduate of Seeds of Literacy, a basic education and high school equivalency prep program for adults in Cleveland, Ohio. Today, I am honored to share my story of how literacy turned chaos into opportunity. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I had a hard childhood with abuse in the home. I left home when I was 16. I didn't finish the 9th grade or high school. I went right to work. I had a lot of jobs, but none of them paid very well. I worked in nursing homes, fast food restaurants, as a home health aide, and a housekeeper. By the time I was in my 40s, I was working at the airport, cleaning airplanes. It was hard work. You were out in the elements and had to work fast, cleaning planes between flights. I wanted something else, but I didn't think I had anything to offer anyone. I didn't have my GED, and I didn't have much self-confidence. I cleaned airplanes and didn't think I had anything in common with people who were flying on those planes. I never stood out. I didn't feel good about myself and was going through depression. I thought to myself, I've got to do something with my life. I want to get my GED and check it off my list. I had tried programs before, but I didn't finish. I came to Seeds of Literacy because it had one-on-one tutoring. I was determined that this time would be different. I worked on my GED for 11 years at Seeds. I studied every chance I got. On my lunch break, 15-minute break, while I was waiting on my ride. On the bus, in the doctor's office, I didn't give up. During the time I was working on my GED at Seeds, I got a better job working in the President's Club at the airport. I took the GED 6 times before I passed. I will never forget the phone call from Chris at Seeds telling me that I had passed. And my life changed at that moment. I didn't know at the time, but my life will never be the same. I thought I would be proud to finish the GED and get it off my plate. I would never imagine what would happen next. I started to read more. I started to think I had something to offer others. I had more self-confidence. I started volunteering at Seeds. I thought I would help with filing, but they asked me to tutor. So for the past 6 years, I've been tutoring students twice a week on my days off. My specialty is fractions. I had always wanted to play music, so I started taking keyboard lessons and practicing every day. I learned to make candy, knit roughly scarves, and duct tape crafts. I kept learning new things. I started talking to my customers at the club. I felt that I had something to share. We talk about books we read and our families, and I shared my story with them. Many of my customers are in business and government. I would never thought I had anything in common with them, but I do. In 2016, I won the National Learner of the Year award. I attended a conference in Dallas to accept the award and participate in workshops. Governor Kasich gave me the Courage Award, and I was invited to lead the Pledge of Allegiance at a session of the Republican National Convention here in Cleveland. I was named one of Cleveland's most interesting people in 2017 by Cleveland Magazine. The Cleveland Foundation chose me as one of Cleveland's placemaker this year, and I'm so honored to be a part of Creative Mornings today. Best of all, I am now a literacy ambassador. Over the past 2.5 years, I've shared my stories about how education changed my life with people at homeless shelters, recovery programs, health fairs, back-to-school events, library programs, senators, and congresspeople. I want to give back to the community, and I can do that by sharing my passion about literacy and how the GED changed my life. I am blessed to be out talking to people. I would never have imagined doing these things before I got my GED. I see opportunities now that I didn't before. When we feel shy or afraid, we miss opportunities and the chance to share ourselves. As Mel Robbins says in the 5-second rules, at any age and with any goal, we have the power to own ourselves. Look inside, take a step, and try something to change your life. Literacy has made my life limitless. I am a different person with a different life now. I am always learning. I am always looking for what's next. I know I have more to offer now, and I am looking for the chance to do that. You know, whatever happens in our lives, we cannot go back. We are here now, and this is what we have to work with. It's hard sometimes. You have to want it and work at it. We need to continuously work on ourselves. We should be a different person than we were last month or last week or even yesterday. I learned these lessons through improving my literacy skills. We all can learn. We all can change. My advice for dreamers is to go for it. Surround yourself with quality people to see what's possible. It can be hard work, and you need to be disciplined and persistent. You might not get perfect, but you will get better. Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing. There's time for us to ask questions for Margo and for Joe about just about anything that you'd like, preferably things about their programs. But why don't, if you've got questions about the program, we've got about 15 minutes or so to chat, and I'll let you guys take it away. I'm just going to give it over to Joe.
Anybody have any questions or?
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't, again, as I mentioned in my speech, I didn't have a good childhood. So I left Cleveland and I went to 2 different Job Corps, one of them being Atterbury Job Corps. I took up cooking and baking. They offered the GED, but they found me a job, so I didn't think I needed. My oldest sister went to Cleveland Job Corps, so I decided to come to Cleveland and go to Cleveland Job Corps. I took up nursing assistant and dietary assistant, graduated. Again, they found me a job, and I didn't think I needed a GED, but just going through life, I need the GED.
Don't be shy. Oh, see?
I've got it. Yeah, all 3 at once. Who wants to go? You want to go here first?
I'm a 7th grade English teacher, so I kind of work best with stories. Can you tell a story about something that you felt changed in how you dealt with the world or dealt with people once you had a better sense of how to read more deeply?
Well, when I was a kid, I really didn't read. I read a little, but not really. As I got to be an adult, I started reading self-help books. Again, just going through life, being depressed of what happened to me in my childhood. That bothered me. And then again, not having my GED. And I've tried several programs for the GED, you stop and you start. Life gets in the way. So I started cleaning planes for Continental in 2005. And again, the jobs that I had found was, minimum wage job. When I started working at the airport cleaning planes, again, $7.25, cleaning those big old jets that you see flying by. So at that time, I was in my 40s, and I said I need to, I wanted a better life for myself, and I needed to get my GED. I first called for help, and they directed me to Seeds of Literacy.
What, as an organization with Seeds of Literacy, what are your biggest challenges and what are some of your biggest needs as an organization to be able to help people?
Money. No, seriously, it is money. So we serve about 1,000 students a year, and we have wonderful volunteer tutors. So we have about 225 volunteer tutors. So we always need volunteers. And if you don't want to tutor but want to help in other ways, we welcome your skills. So we have volunteers who help on our finance committee. We have marketing volunteers who help with our search engine optimization. So we grew up as a volunteer organization, and that's a lot of what we are today. But funding continues to be the big one. We rely mostly on private, meaning not public dollars. Cleveland Foundation is a huge supporter, and we are so very grateful for them and for others in the foundation community. We have some wonderful donors, individual donors, and we get a little money from the city. We had gotten money from the state of Ohio, and they decided not to fund us this year based on our method. So we are advocating in Columbus, but not to great success. So they've made the decision only to fund traditional classroom-based style classrooms, which really don't work for our population. Our students really need something different. So that's how you can help.
Oh, there we go. Just a sec. Somebody, I have you. I'll make it. Here we go. Fine.
I wondered whether you had enlisted the aid of any congressperson to advocate for you in Columbus, and then have you sought grants outside of Cleveland nationally?
Yes, on both accounts. We are working with State Senator Matt Dolan and State Senator Sandra Williams on this issue. On the state level, Sandra Williams was able to get us a meeting with the Chancellor's office, who usually doesn't meet with their grantees. And we have very good relationships with Senator Brown, partially because of Margo. We've done Hill visits down in DC. There's the federal funding for adult literacy falls under the workforce money and is tied to pretty high bar employment outcomes. So, and that's another discussion for another day. But we do receive some grant funding from national organizations. There is not a lot of funding earmarked for what we do. We are sort of in this weird desert. We're not higher ed, we're not K through 12, we're not community college, we're not a workforce program, we are basic education. Most of our students are coming to us at between a 4th and a 6th grade reading and math level. And so to get a high school equivalency, it's a long process. It does not happen in a year. Most of our students are in their 30s and 40s and have children or are taking care of other family members who are ill. So there's a lot of sometimes chaos, sometimes just as we say, life gets in the way. And most of our students, not all, but most of them live at or below the poverty level. So about 84% of our students are coming from poverty, and literacy is directly linked to economic outcomes and living in poverty.
I was just curious, Joe, if you could, excuse me, share a little bit about your method and how it differs from like a traditional classroom method. And then I was curious, Margo, from your point of view, what was that like when you were going through the program to have to work with SEEDS and see the different way that they work with your folks at SEEDS?
So we have, when you come to our classroom, it's a big room with round tables. And you see a bunch of adults sitting next to each other. So it doesn't look like a traditional classroom. So a student comes in, they register with us, we do some testing to see where they fall on the curriculum. And when they come into class, they grab their folder, because their folder with all their work and their test outcomes and all the stuff about them academically stays at SEEDS. And they check in with a staff member who's called a site coordinator and say, hey, I'm here, I'm working on fractions. And they say, oh, that's great, because Margo's here and she's really good on fractions, so we're gonna match you guys up. So our staff matches the student need to the tutor's ability, gets them started on some curriculum, and just lets them go. Our tutors work with our students. They might work with the same student every week, but most likely they're not. It's sort of a free-flowing, wacky thing that works. We don't schedule our students. We don't schedule our tutors. Whoever is there, work together. And everybody says, you're nuts, you're crazy, and somehow, you know what, it works. Because everybody's schedules being what they are, whether you're a tutor or a student, you know, there's somebody to work with you there. If we have too many tutors, then they help out with other projects. If we have too many students, we all sort of chip in, and there might be one tutor working with 3 students on fractions, getting them started, checking in with them, and that's how it goes. But what our students say, and I'll let Margo address this too, is that the tutors make the difference, because many of our students say, you know, no one has cared about my education until no one cares. Like, somebody called me because I didn't show up in class. We're like, yeah, we want you to get back here. So that concern and that compassion, you can't measure it as a metric, but it's really, really important to our program. And I will let Margo talk both about a student and now as on the other side of the table as a tutor.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, again, before I came to Seeds of Literacy, I went to other GED programs, and it was just the classroom with maybe 10 students or 12 students and one teacher. So that didn't work for me. And like I said, I've been to different programs. But when I found out about Seeds of Literacy was a one-on-one tutoring, that definitely worked for me. because again, they cared about my assignments, what I was working on. They just was able to give you that one-on-one attention, and that definitely helped me. And I believe it. I'm talking to as a tutor now. I talk to other students, and they say it's the same thing. I definitely encourage my students, on what they're working on. I work a lot on fractions. No, I was not good at math. Again, I was not good at math in, grade school or the little bit of high school, that I went to, was not good. I never learned algebra or geometry till I came to Seeds of Literacy. So again, I teach a lot of fractions now. I also do a project with the Laurel's Home, which is a battered homeless shelter for women and children. I help the women with their GED. So when I go over there, some of them working on fractions. I was just there on Wednesday. I had a young lady working on multiplication. So again, we tutor them one-on-one. So it definitely works.
How have you seen Seeds of Literacy improve communities overall, or is it more of a person-by-person basis? And how would you say?
So, are you talking about community impact kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. It's hard to see community impact. It truly is. So, many of our students. So if we have 1,000 students a year, last year we had 57 GED graduates, and that's a good ratio. So it's kind of shocking. It's like, oh my gosh, you only had 57. But first of all, it takes a long time for some of our students, and our students are dealing with not having childcare, not having transportation, other issues in poverty. So I think it's probably have more of an individual impact. But what's so great is that our students are now able to help their kids with homework. That's a big, adult education has this incredible generational impact. And so many of our students say, hey, you know what, my kid made me come here, or my grandson said I should learn how to do the math so I could help him. So I think it's hard to measure. The funders always want to know, and we want to know, and we want our students to know, what is different about their before and after. So it's an ongoing quest to try to measure that.
So speaking of generational impact, Margo, how has your new view of the world, because you are now a very literate person, how has that impacted your family?
Well, again, being from Chicago, my family most of them is out of town, but they do get all the updates on what I'm doing. Music lessons, from music lesson to the awards, and tutoring other people at different facilities. It definitely has changed my life, even at work. Some of the agents have come up to me and said, well, I got this person, they need their GED. So, of course, I, let them know about Seeds of Literacy. So it definitely has impacted my life, in the community where I'm at, or if I'm just out, and I know somebody that don't have, they'll say, oh, my sister or my mother don't have their GED, and I usually have information to give them. So it's definitely changed my view.
Hello, I've met a few young people who have high school diplomas but still have great struggles with literacy. Is the GED the only goal, or do you have other supports as well for people who already have a diploma?
If somebody needs some help and they have their diploma, send them over if they're over 18. So most of our students have that as their end goal, but not all. We work with some folks who are in some of the trades programs at Tri-C and at Ohio Technical College, just to help with their math skills. We also have a couple in their 80s who and it's really hilarious, they go to the different sites because they want their own experience. They don't want to go to the same site. So husband goes to the West Side location because he wants to get better at his reading skills so he can read the paper. Wife goes to the East Side location, and she's working on a memoir for her great or great-great-grandchildren. So we have a couple retired people who again just really want to have had careers, have had jobs, but really want to have that personal satisfaction. So yeah, send them over.
I'm coming.
Here's probably an opposite thought. I myself, I do one-on-one tutoring a lot too, all kinds of subject. Doesn't matter students or adults. Some of them even college students, but they are struggling with simple stuff. The problem here we see is in our public education system, actually, maybe they should adopt this type of model into our public schools, because not everybody learned the same thing in the same way. Because of your background, maybe cultural, maybe family, sometimes you receive information in a different way. So maybe maybe your organization should try to find a way to let the school system to adopt this idea. So for the kids who cannot really learn well while they are still at a school time, can actually catch up by having this type of model. In that case, for example, Ms. Hudson, you probably would not have been illiterate if you had that kind of help when you were in school.
I think that's a great idea, and
yes, please try to work on that.
I know that there are several groups. I know one off the top of my head, the Jewish Federation of Cleveland has a great volunteer corps that goes into the Cleveland public schools and works with students in terms of like one-to-one tutoring to supplement. But yeah, no, that would be a very great big shift for our system. But it would be, we're all for it, man.
Joe, could you talk a little bit about what the GED entails? I think people have outdated ideas about it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. So the GED and high school equivalency tests changed dramatically in 2014. The GED changes about every 10 to 12 years to reflect the changes in education, K through 12 education, because that's what it measures. So in 2014, it went from a paper and pencil test to a computerized test. It was also bought by Pearson VUE Testing, which is the largest educational publisher, so it went from a nonprofit to a for-profit company, which changed the pricing structure. The GED is 4 different sections, and it's reading, math, science, and social studies. But there's a lot of writing throughout the test. If you go on our website under the resource tab, or if you just search in the search bar for GED, you can see some sample questions. They're really hard. They're really, really hard. It's a timed test. You take it a subject at a time. You go to a test center. You sit at a computer in a carrel with a camera on yourself. You have a whiteboard, and a small whiteboard, a marker, and no eraser. And then you take this test. Most of our students come to us with very limited computer skills, so part of our curriculum is doing digital literacy and just good old keyboarding so that people can type an essay, as they're being timed in that situation. So it's a pretty tremendous test. A couple years ago when it changed, we started doing that the first thing when our funders came to visit for a site visit. So we're asking for money. They come to see our program, and we say, hey, before we do anything else, why don't you sit down and take a couple sample questions? And man, does that change the conversation, because immediately you're sitting in the seat of the student, and it's hard. It's hard. So, again, go take some item samplers. Boy, Stephanie, thanks for bringing that up. We are having public open houses next Wednesday, the 26th, at both of our locations. Our class times are 9 to 11, 1 to 3, and 6 to 8, so you're just welcome to stop by. We have wonderful, delightful treats and tours given by our student leadership folks and some of our tutors. This is generously supported by the Cleveland Foundation. And our addresses are on our website. We also have materials out in the hallway on the table with all of Margo's accolades.
Well, I have my sister that's younger than me. She don't have her GED. So I'm always, again, sharing my accolades with her and what I'm doing in the community. She works, and I don't really just keep talking to her about getting her GED, because I'm sure somewhere along the line she will figure that out like I did. But they all let me know again that they're proud of me, and hopefully through my living and demonstrating literacy, that she will, call me and decide, hey, I'm going to go back to school and get my GED. I would just say, don't give up. It's hard. Again, as you get older, you've been out of school for some time. You got family and doctor's appointments, and you have it. You have all that to do, but you can do it. It can be done. Again, I studied every chance I got. Doctor's office. It was a nice day in the backyard. I would be studying. So I would say never give up, and that's on anything. Again, I mentioned that I'm taking keyboard lessons, and that was something I always wanted to do. So after I got my GED, I started taking keyboard lessons. So again, I practice every day. I try to get an hour or better in, and practice makes better. Not perfect, as my music teacher say. So it can be done. A lot of discipline. The discipline is very important. You have to have that discipline no matter what.